How's it going, man?
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for your
Yeah,
time.
of course.
Cool.
Whatever direction you want to go with this, I know that there's so many. I'm an open book here, so whatever you want to talk about.
Okay, awesome. So today my guest is Alex. I'm sorry, how do you say your last name? I want to make sure I get it right.
No, it's okay. Talinka.
Tilinca. Okay, so it's what I thought, but I'm usually wrong. So Alex Tilinca, pretty online coach. I think, if I'm not mistaken, are you the first trans male to compete in the NPC?
It's funny. I get so I don't necessarily want to say first because I'm so unsure, like I believe I'm one of the first for sure. I just don't want to say 100% the first if I'm, you know, if it's otherwise, but I would definitely say I'm one of the first to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, and definitely kind of successfully, right? So you competed in the classic physique division, is that right?
Yeah, I compete in classic physique. I was a bit younger, so that was when I was 19. I'm 23 now. I haven't stepped on stage since then.
Now, were you? Because didn't you have a post? You got a couple posts. Were you getting ready for a show, or were those
Yeah,
throwbacks?
so what happened was I was getting ready for a show, and then my grandfather ended up
Oh,
getting really ill. So family first for me, but I definitely do plan on getting back on stage. I do love it.
did he? Is he okay?
Yeah, he's fine.
Okay, that's,
But for me, he's in Europe. I was born in Europe, so it was a trip and a half to get back to
uh,
my homeland
yeah.
for better
Oh
terms.
man.
So unfortunately, but yeah, I would love to. I actually would love to do 212 long term, but
Yeah.
to start off, I started in classic. Yeah.
Are you still trying to compete in the classic and the NPC? Or are you trying to move up to open? What is your goal with that?
I think I just want to go into the open right away.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people start in classic and then kind of make their way up, but I've always been one for a challenge. I think I'm here for the journey, not the destination kind of guy.
Yeah.
So I think I'd love to just go into open, you
Are
know.
you are you over the weight cap now? If you were to do classic, I mean, you were still under, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I was to do classic now, I would have to lose a lot of weight. So
Really? Okay, that's
yeah, it's one of those things. I never stopped, even though I haven't competed for a bit. I never stopped living the lifestyle, so I've progressively gotten a bit bigger for
At
sure.
least they have raised them like quite a bit though. Finally, I think they were 12 pounds up from when I first did my show when I was in classic before I grew it. Now they keep if they go like another like 5 pounds, I can just drop back down to classic. You know?
Yeah, I think, I mean, look at Chris, right? He said he's setting the precedent of like that very gray line between classic and bodybuilding. He just competed in bodybuilding, right? So I mean, I think I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think at one point we're gonna get to a point where, I think the popularity of classic is there, and I think that they're gonna start to realize, to just run that as the primary narrative, right? Of like,
Yeah,
okay,
well, taking all the good genetics for sure. I mean, most of the best genetic freaks are going to the classic.
right, exactly. So I mean, again, I love bodybuilding. I think a lot of people argue back and forth of like what they should do with the state of bodybuilding. I always just say whatever is best for bodybuilding. I love the sport. I'm here for it, so I'll ride the wave.
So let me ask you this. So I guess in most cases, most people would say that, say a trans female, former, male. And I'm sorry if I say anything wrong. Like I don't,
It's
I
okay.
grew up, I lived in West Hollywood for quite a while, so I got to see a lot, but I
Listen,
still might get my terms wrong.
I'll tell you right now, I don't subscribe to most ideologues you'll find in the
That's
community.
what I was telling people too, because like I said, I spent some
Yeah.
time in West Hollywood around, people that lived it, and like they were never quite as like crazy as their advocates. If that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I promise you there's quite literally nothing you could say to me that's gonna offend me.
Uh,
I listen, when I was younger, I was at Bev's. Like I was one of the Bev's kids. Like, they would joke around with me and like, am I allowed to curse on this?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. They'd be like, "Oh, fucking tranny," like, like I don't care. Like for me, it's one of those things that I think, um, you know, again, I hold a lot of personal beliefs that go against the majority, unfortunately, in the community, or at least the loud voices, right? I think this is the unfortunate part, and I actually talk to a lot of people within the competitive bodybuilding community space about this. That unfortunately, the loudest voices in my community are what you hear most, but
Exactly.
most trans people are the most average people you'd ever meet in sense of where they stand politically, socially, stuff like that. And I always tell people like with being the trans aspect of it, I never want to be, I don't want special treatment because I'm trans. Like I actually I would reject that. Like I would
Yeah.
rather you just treat me like everyone else and let me prove myself via merit, And like that's why I got into bodybuilding because for me I was like, wait, this is a great way for me to take control of my body, as someone that's trans. And what I'm about to say is going to be incredibly controversial for no reason, but being trans is a mental disorder. It is. I mean, at the end of the day, because listen, at the end of the day, I have such an extreme discomfort with my body that I cannot be a productive member of society unless I took medical intervention. That's a mental disorder, and that's okay though. Like, I don't see the problem with just admitting that,
That's
you
such
know.
a healthy way to look at it too. Honestly, it sounds kind of not healthy,
Yeah.
but it is. I mean, you're accepting reality more so.
Right. And like I think that's the problem, right? Is like the trans community is going in a direction that it's like rejecting facts. And that's why people are no longer supporting it because you're going into a land of Delulu. I mean, it's just, again, for a community that is so pro mental health, why aren't you just accepting the fact this ADHD is a mental disorder.
Yeah.
Autism is a mental disorder. Freaking Elon Musk is autistic. Is he a loser? No. Like I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with having a mental
Yeah. I
disorder.
mean, I've had clients
You
with
know?
severe eating disorders that had to get the lap band and that saved their life. So
Exactly. Exactly. So for me, I was like, wow, this is such a fantastic outlet for me to create, like, overcome this mental disorder and actually feel like I do have control over my body, even further than just transitioning. So yeah, for me, like, listen, you don't have to, you don't have to beat around the bush with me. So
That's funny. Yeah, I grew up in a pretty kind of like rednecky area from Texas. And but there was like, I got shit for being like half Mexican even. And it's like so, but like, my family was always very like open. And then I moved out to California and basically kind of went directly to West Hollywood, which was just
wow.
just chaos in a good way. I was running the Gold's Gym Hollywood, and that's where I met Rich Piana. He was one of our independents out there. So I'm seeing like that kind of like freakiness. Then I'm seeing these gay dudes with like ass implants, and I'm seeing the trans community. In fact, I never forget this. It was like my first week at this gym, so I hadn't met. This gym was crazy busy. I don't know if it still is that busy. But it was like one of the busiest in America. And I remember we get these email surveys, and I'm reading this survey, and it's just asking how people are enjoying the gym, and this person gives their feedback. They just love it. They go, I could not have made my transition. I went from a 200-pound Puerto Rican woman to a 160-pound Irish man. And I just remember thinking like, man, I came far away from home. And I
Yeah.
guess,
Yeah. I think the gym is such a fantastic outlet for trans folks, honestly. Like, the biggest thing, right? And I always tell people is like, if you genuinely are trans, you're going to do everything in your power to integrate into society. Like, you're not going to want to stand out. Like, you're going to do everything possible to fit in and quite literally take it. Like, you'll see a lot of like, the bigger trans personalities that aren't a problem. They are hyper feminine or hyper masculine of like, so for me, like, right, I went the hyper masculine route where I was like, I didn't just want to transition. I wanted to be a muscular guy because it goes into that idea. Like, I really, really want to socially integrate. So I want to make sure no matter what happens, you would never question. So like, if you see those people that go out of their way to stand out, that's like kind of a question mark because like you mentioned the people that you've spoken to, right? In LA and Cali, like they go the complete opposite direction, like as far as physically possible. So it's a great. I love bodybuilding. I think it's such a hard sport, and I don't think people really recognize how hard it is. I think bodybuilding has allowed me to grow as a person, even in my business. Right? I feel like I always tell people like if you can prep, you can do anything, man. Like
yeah,
seriously, you can
I mean
do
that.
anything.
I mean,
Yeah,
just the time management skill you gain from that, can really it can apply to anything.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
I would assume that, yeah, like you're saying, most people that are transitioning, like males, they probably all want to get in the gym, right? Is that pretty like the thing?
Yeah.
So is that like what you specialize with? Do you coach mainly like trans males
Yes.
or? And
Yep.
so is there a lot? Is there like differences? I mean, I would think there probably are a couple of things, right? In
Mhm.
addition to the hormones, like so
Absolutely.
maybe can touch on some of the differences as far as training trans males.
Yeah, I would say it's so interesting. So the way I got into, and those are great questions. The way I got into coaching was, so when I first wanted to compete, I was in the
Oh, you were
search.
Jason, right? By the way,
Yes, I
sorry, I
was
didn't mean
in
to
Jason.
interrupt. That, yeah, I
No, no,
love
no.
Jason.
Dude, please get all the shout outs to Jason. I absolutely love Jason. Fantastic person and coach, everything in between. I would say, yeah. So at first, the way I kind of got into this was I myself was looking for a coach, and I got turned down a lot. And a lot of the times, it wasn't even it wasn't even around the fact that I was trans. They just were like, "Hey, I've never worked with someone that's trans. I don't want to be responsible here," which I actually appreciated the honesty. So and then I met Jason, and Jason was super uber upfront with me. And he was like, honestly, dude, I have zero experience doing this. I'm just going to use basic logic, and I hope you can work with me on that. And I was like, I
He's a smart
appreciate it.
dude.
Yeah. And he was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, that's fine. That's all I'm looking for. Just someone having the willingness to utilize whatever education you already have towards something different. And he was like, yeah, I like a challenge. I'm like, okay, cool. Um, I would say the difference. So when putting on size, from my experience with myself as well as working with others, with Jason, just like now like 6, 7 years, when bulking really, especially if the trans guy has been on testosterone for I would say at least a year is the threshold, the body does really respond and mimic like a biological male. Yet you start to see the differences once you try and diet a trans guy down. For some reason, like even speaking for myself when I was prepping, you hit that like 6 week out mark and your body just starts responding and behaving like a woman. It really does. Like all of a sudden, your body can't handle the protein intake of a man. It just your gut starts to go, gut issues. I've heard stories of, you know, for example, like a lot of trans people, if you've been on testosterone for long enough, you'll lose your menstrual cycle. It's gone. But it's funny because when you start to diet us down, you start to notice, for some reason, there's 1 week every single month where your weight just starts to fly up for absolutely no reason. So it's like the body is still expecting those biological responses without the actual period, but you're still like, women like you'll hold more water and like all of these things that just make it so like unique almost.
What about
Um,
like fat, losing certain fat stores at the end, right? Because I think there's like different
yeah,
fat receptors. Like, is it find it harder to lose around what is it, like
yeah.
the hips or anything?
I would still, I mean, great question. I would say that I grow, my legs grow a lot faster than like my friends that are biological men, right? And I would equate that to me being trans. Meanwhile, my shoulders may take a little bit longer. So like those biological truths don't really change. So it's pretty, but it's one of those things. I guess the biggest difference would be imagine you take a woman who's competing, who takes gear, but now she's on year round. Like that's what you're dealing with. So like at one point, all those androgenic effects they stay, right? And it's there's also so much nuance, right? Because like for example, when did this person transition? Did they transition way after puberty, before puberty? That completely changes the story, right? Like for me, I transitioned before I fully hit puberty. Now I know that's super controversial, which understandably is. Um, and for me, I never fully went through female puberty. A lot of trans guys do. So that also is something to keep in consideration. So for me,
How does that change things in your opinion? That seems like it would.
yeah, for me, I would say what changes it the most is like, for example, my top surgery results. Like a lot of trans guys have scarring. I have zero scarring. You wouldn't be able to tell a difference.
Yeah.
There's pros and cons, and that's just the hard truth that I think both sides need to agree on. Is like there's really a lot of pros and cons either way. Do you allow someone to transition young or not? I'm not saying either sides are wrong. I think there's validity in both, right? Because like for example, something that the trans community doesn't want to talk about a lot, especially for trans women. So the opposite of me is if a trans woman transitions too young, what happens is if she wants to go ahead and later get bottom surgery, well, the way bottom surgery works for trans women is they quite literally like they'll take the penis and they'll invert it. So if you don't have any growth, then you can't get bottom surgery as a trans woman. So it actually works against you. And like, I don't know if you've heard of Jazz Jennings, I think her last name is, but she's had a lot of complications because she transitioned young. So it's so like, it's such a complex issue that I feel I wish more people would be just willing to talk about it openly and honest and not get so triggered on both sides. Um,
Yeah.
because even like the trans community, like so many people, like they just immediately feel attacked, but it's like, wait, no, like what if people just genuinely are concerned for their kids? Like
Yeah,
that's
do you get
valid.
pushback if you voice this kind of stuff around the community at all?
Um, as in like myself or like just in general.
Like just pushback from the community if they were to hear you or anything. Like, is your
Um,
circle pretty much all along the same lines, or is there you're in Austin, right?
I'm in Austin, yeah.
So it's a pretty good spot. So what's the general vibe there? Would you say that most of the people in the trans community are along lines with you?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would say more like moderate.
yeah,
I wouldn't call myself either direction really. I would say I'm most of my friends aren't even trans, honestly.
yeah,
And that's just like organically. I don't go out of
yeah,
my way to like I most of my friends are bodybuilders,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah.
That's truly
That's
who I am.
normal. Yeah,
Yeah, and like that's why I tell people, right? Like I really like I call myself a bodybuilder who happens to be trans, not a trans bodybuilder. That's how I see things. And when it comes to like my clients and just the team in general, not like yeah, we primarily deal with trans guys, but not everyone on my team is trans themselves. Like all that really matters is you have the experience, and willingness. Anyone can work with a trans person. It just comes down to making sure like the trans person is willing and the coach is willing. There's just there's those nuances of like again, this is anecdotal completely. I'm not going to sit here and say that there's any studies whatsoever around this, but like that 1 week a month thing, I swear on my experience 6 years now is a thing. Like I just noticed, especially for trans guys, that the weight just like they'll be losing like a pound, 2 pounds a week. Everything like no factors, cardio stays the same, meal plan stays the same, supplement like nothing changes, and then all of a sudden once a month, boom, their weight like goes up 2, 3 pounds. It's like dramatic. I'm like, holy shit, did you like eat like 5 cheat meals this week? Did you like not do like what happened? And they're like, no, I didn't do anything. And at one point, I started seeing the pattern between all my clients, regardless of age, height, length of testosterone, even with myself. I'm like, there's got to be some kind of truth in this, right? Is there any studies? No, but I would argue, well, how long have there been transgenders?
yeah,
So there's no studies, right? So stuff like that really like it's like you can ask Jason, pure experience. Like you just got to work
yeah.
with a trans person to realize, yeah.
Maybe it's something to do with pituitary, and I know, like I know women can produce estrogen and like the
Mhm.
fat and like different stuff. So that's interesting. So tell me a little bit about working with Jason real quick. So did you guys have to like change things up a lot, or was it like
Yeah.
so
No, go for
like
it.
so did you do your whole contest prep with him?
Yeah, I did my whole contest prep with Jason. I would say, yeah, 6 weeks in, excuse me, 6 weeks out is when I really had to change everything. Again, my body just completely started rejecting everything. It was rejecting the protein. My protein wasn't even that high. It was like 240. Like that's not that, like I've heard way more.
Yeah,
Protein was at like 240, I believe, off the top of my head. It was rejecting that. We had to cut protein back by like literally half it. I
yeah,
went down to like 140 grams of protein a day. Like we had to up carbs, we had to up fats. Like literally the distinction of prepping a woman versus a man. A
yeah.
man, especially if on gear, you can slam protein, protein city all day, keep carbs super low, keep fat super low. That was not working for my body.
You had to go higher carbs.
Higher fat too. Yeah, fat had to
Yeah.
go up, just like you would with a woman. Higher fats for digestion, stuff like
Mm.
that. Obviously, not to like white label everyone. Everyone's different, but
Mm.
just general trends, right? And my body started to behave like a woman. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, biological women are a little bit more extreme hormonally, like you said, especially
Mhm.
when you get to a low body fat. But what about the actual like hormones? Because I don't. What is like a testosterone dose you take as part of the just transitioning? And does that
So
stay the same, or do you like taper it up and down? How's that work?
yeah, great question. So I would say generally endocrinologists will put someone that's trans, but it really depends like where your natural testosterone levels lie as a biological woman, which really varies. I naturally have high T, which was great. So for me, they just had me on 80 milligrams a week. So super
Oh,
low
jeez.
dosing. Yeah, like even way less than like you would see a guy on HRT. I've
Yeah,
heard I've heard trans guys that are on I would say I've never heard more than like 120 milligrams a week. I would say most endocrinologists, that's where they cap it at. I would say lowest I've heard is like 30 milligrams a week. I was like, you might as well not even take anything. I was
yeah,
like,
yeah. I mean,
you're paying money for nothing. I was like,
yeah,
and then it's interesting because in like within the community, you see like different forms of application. So like obviously intramuscular, people do sub Q, but then there's also people that do like a gel. I mean, I mean, with the gel, it's one of those things where it's like the side effects are pretty crazy because like it's a gel, so it's gonna take time to absorb. So you might by accident rub some off on your girlfriend, but it's fine,
Yeah, yeah,
like
exactly.
some weird shit like that. So I'm obviously like a big proponent of intramuscular. It's just gonna absorb the best. People do sub Q, but I mean, you're just pricking yourself so much. I don't know. This is from Jason. I've kind of just inherited it. So just intramuscular is king. But if if and when I'm prepping, I definitely obviously up it. So my general would be like between 60 to 80 milligrams a week. I've never taken anything crazy, honestly. I would say I've always underdosed in comparison to my friends that would be competing. But in the same respect, I think my body didn't need as much,
Yeah.
right? Like, I've seen the studies where essentially like my body, wouldn't necessarily need as much as like a biological man. So like the most I've ever ran, never touched trend. I've never touched like anything crazy. I've done EQ. I've done Anavar. I've done Primo. Like my cycle for my prep with Jason was Primo, EQ just at first, and then we weaned off of that as we got closer to the show, and Anavar. And I think I took wind gel for like 4 weeks, like basic, like really like basic stuff.
So yeah, I was wondering, like you were saying, I know that, like you said, women biological women don't need much at
No,
all to get a big response. So what's like the highest you've ever pushed your test?
highest I pushed my test was probably like 300,
Yeah, yeah, and that
100.
was like pretty
And that
pretty
was like,
noticeable.
oh, yeah, I felt that. Yeah, yeah. I would say
Because
like
most,
that.
yeah, I was just for people that don't know, most probably like amateur competitors or most bodybuilders, they're probably like, I would say 400 at the lowest, 500 more typical, like 750 is what you'll see. So that's about half of that.
Yeah. And like, and like this is like these are like and this conversation is fun for me because it's so difficult, especially it's interesting. I have an easier time talking about gear with the competitive bodybuilding community way more than I can talk about hormones with the trans community, which you would think like the trans community is like super open to this kind of conversation, but it's weird because I think there's this like sensitive spot in the trans community where they're like people already kind of give them crap for like cheating, for lack of better terms. So it's like the minute you start talking about steroids, it's like a really touchy topic. And I really want to open that avenue of like the trans community, especially if you want to compete. Like, be like, listen, if anyone needs to take gear, if you're a trans guy, it's gonna be fucking you. Like, come on, like you're at a disadvantage, and that's like if like when I step on stage, I'm at a disadvantage. It's a challenge for me. I am opting and I am okay at the fact that I am at a disadvantage. I'm going to be shorter on stage. That's why I want to do 212. I'm just being realistic.
You
So
know, it's kind of crazy though, because in some way it is, I wouldn't say it's advantage, but it's like you do get like you have a little smaller joint structure, I'm assuming, right? And like
yeah.
you could potentially look like a fucking freak if you like if you really put on some like you could
Yeah.
look really 3D, and like I said, because the slightly smaller joint structure, especially if you're having to make weight. I don't know if there's a difference at all as far as like skeletal mass still at this point, but that could potentially
Yeah.
be beneficial too. I can see you looking like maybe you have the craziest look ever.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that's the thing, right? Like, and I appreciate you bringing that up because big picture, yeah, like certain disadvantages I have, but like, doesn't everyone have a disadvantage on stage?
Yeah.
Whether it be height, maybe socioeconomic class. Some people just don't have the money to like buy all grass-fed organic beef, like, so I always tell trans guys, I'm like, just go for it. Like, if you want to do it, as long as you have top surgery, no one cares. And
Yeah.
like, the thing with top surgery is just because they need to judge your chest. It's not anything personal, but yeah, it's distracting. Like if you want to compete in the NPC, as long as you have top surgery, no one cares. No one cares. I remember for my 20, forgot which birthday, but for one of my birthdays, I paid Bev to train me. No, I believe, excuse me, it was my 19th birthday because it was right before I competed. Because I wanted to ask her, I was like, can I compete? I don't want to get in shape for nothing just to show up there and not realize it was against the rules. So can I compete? Like seriously, like I don't care. Like whatever the answer is, I respect it. I just want to know before I waste my time. And she kind of just looks at me. She was like, "No, I don't think there would be a problem. Like I don't see why not." She's like, "You have surgery, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Okay, so yeah, compete. Who cares?" I'm like, "Okay, okay, so let me compete." I think for trans guys, it's more touchy and it's a lot more difficult with trans women, of course. But for trans men, no one cares. I think actually trans men have a lot easier of a time when it comes to
Yeah.
sports than trans women. Because again, if anything, you're going to be at disadvantage. And
Yeah.
Everyone loves a good underdog. So no one's gonna care. No one's gonna, as long as you aren't coming in with an inherent advantage, then I don't think anyone would bat an eye. Because
Yeah.
competitive people are just competitive. It's not about you being trans. It's about the fact that you're creating it's an unfair space now. You know?
Yeah, and we respect the work. You know what I mean? It's like that's why all bodybuilders are tight with each other. You can see somebody who you know is like on your same level at the gym. You just get the subtle little head nod because you know the work that goes into that. Now,
Right.
about the estrogen, do you have any difficulty, or is it easier for you to manage? Do you not have any side effects from estrogen? Do you have to keep that like lower, or how is that any different for you when you're
Yeah.
competing?
So with estrogen, I just go on an estrogen blocker just like any other guy would, truthfully, just a Arimidex. I
Like a
did have
normal dose?
Yeah, normal dose, 50 microgram. I haven't taken Arimidex in a second. Yeah, very little. Like I
Yeah,
not nothing crazy. I only take Arimidex too if I'm competing, like if I'm upping stuff. Year round, I don't. Could I? Probably. I don't though. I really only take stuff if I'm competing. Other than that, I just kind of run my base because I'm on all the time.
yeah,
I don't come off. I just, for me, it's like a health perspective,
yeah,
the reason I do that. Um, and yeah, I think regarding my transition, like steroids, hormones, I don't know if this is necessarily related to the steroids necessarily, but what I would say is I've only had one health scare my entire life, revolving around my estrogen, and that was, I remember this was 2 years ago, and mind you, I did transition pre-puberty, so I never actually acquired a menstrual cycle. I never started it, and I remember 2 years ago, I was just doing, it was a Friday midday, kind of like now-ish time, um, a little later in the evening, and I was just finishing up some coaching work. And I remember I started like getting like really bad cramps. And then all of a sudden I started bleeding profusely to the point like I had to go, like I thought I was like hemorrhaging. Like I don't know what was going on. Like I started bleeding so bad. I ended up going to the hospital, and I was just straight up with them. I was like, listen, I'm a trans guy. I've never had a period. I think I'm having a very extreme one right now. If you please let me know, like, whatever nurse is
yeah.
comfortable helping me out. I don't expect everyone to be comfortable doing this. Um, and yeah, it was so bad. I ended up having to get like surgery. I like tore up. Like I don't know what happened. To this day, the doctors have no idea what happened to me, other than I probably would assume I accumulated, because like periods, women get this, you know and if you're a biological woman, you get a period because it's your body needs to like get rid of shit, like for lack of better terms. And I never got rid of that shit. So I think what happened was like my body just needed to like let it out. And up to that point, I never saw a gynecologist. I was really irresponsible about it. I just continued to take steroids if I was competing, just took my testosterone, never really took the time to like think, you know, hopefully this is not going to cause an issue later down the road. And yeah, I ended up bleeding so bad they needed to like stitch me up. Literally, like I was like all fucked up. So yeah, that's the only like really scary thing that's happened to me.
Have you heard of that or anything similar happen before, or you're the only person that you've known of
I've
that?
heard it happen before to other people.
Yeah,
Because if you can't tell, yeah, I'm an open book. So
yeah,
I like was speaking openly about it with some of my clients actually, because I pride myself on being very quick to respond to my clients. So I pretty much like sent out like a broadcast. It was like, hey guys, I'm out for the day. I'm sorry. I'll get back to you tomorrow. Don't freak out, please.
and you
Um,
were okay pretty quickly. There wasn't like a big recovery or anything.
no, it was just like a freak.
Ugh.
Like it was like I lost a lot of blood. Like
Yeah.
they had to give me like a transfusion.
Oh man,
Scary. It was like,
gnarly.
yeah, and it was painful. Like it was really,
Hey,
really painful, honestly. So
imagine having to deal with the little mini one of those every fucking month. You lucked
yeah.
out.
No, that's the thing. Like people think I like play dumb. I'm like, no, like I just genuinely never experienced one up until
Yeah.
that. But that wasn't normal. At the time, we're still cordial and friendly. I was dating this girl named Lexi, and she even was just like, that's not that is not normal. Like
Yeah.
I was like, I called her up first. I'm like, Lexi, like, and like I had her come over, and she's like, then like at that point, I'm just in the bathroom, honestly, like in the tub, because like I don't want to make a mess. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And she walked in, and she like immediately called 911. She was like,
Yeah.
listen,
Like looks like a murder scene.
yeah, like it literally looked like a murder. It's terrible. So yeah, other than that, I've had no side effects of whatever I've been doing. Is there to say, will I have side effects in the future? Who knows? And that's the truth. It is an experiment right now. So
What does your blood work look like as far as just like your like estrogen levels and test levels? What do they float around at? Is that something you pay attention to?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I would say my testosterone levels when I'm on like my just natural 80 milligrams, not natural, but whatever, you know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
my regularly scheduled testosterone dose. Yeah, I would say it sits in like 650, something like that.
Yeah.
So, like on the higher end, but still healthy, 650, 700. Estrogen's like 300, something like
Yeah.
that. Like I would say like my estrogen again, I naturally had
Yeah.
low estrogen, higher test. That's kind of where I sit. My blood work's always healthy because I eat really healthy year round. I'm very mindful of that. I take my vitamins, I take my multivitamin mineral, I take omega lyes, I take a bunch of Jason's product like his GDA and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm very mindful with the way I eat. I only eat grass fed beef, stuff like that.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Romania, so I was born in
They don't
uh
do this in Romania, right?
no what the transitioning. Oh,
Yeah.
it's yeah, definitely not to the extent America does for sure. Yeah, it's what's unfortunate about Romania is it's still recovering from like the 90s. I don't assume you would know anything about Romania. Most
Mm-mm.
people don't. But pretty much Romania was communist until the 90s. So after the Cold War, when pretty much Russia took over all of Eastern Europe, Iron Wall, all the fun stuff. Romania was one of the first countries after Poland to be taken over, and our dictator stayed until like the 80s, 90s. So we stayed communist for long. Like my parents grew up like in communism. It was awful. That's kind of why I have certain political views because people think communism works. It doesn't work.
Yeah, it shows one real world example where it's
Yeah.
working.
Yeah, like I just think they don't have perspective, right? I unfortunately my family has perspective, like it does not work. Like it was like the dictator was quite literally beheaded. Like pretty third world shit, you know? So yeah, I grew up in Romania briefly. I wouldn't say I'm a proud American. Like I call myself an American. I'm proud to be an American. I just have that background living in Romania for the first couple of years of my life. I was born in a very rural area, like dirt street, one road, gypsy village next door kind of thing. Very different lifestyle, I would say. They eat very healthy first and foremost. But yeah, socially, it's funny because my grandpa is your typical like veteran, World War II veteran, very tough as nails guy. Like he was an orphan of eight. The oldest was responsible for all of them, originally
Wow.
from Germany. Yeah, farmer, like whatever you could, owns 500 guns, like whatever you could put in there, the stereotype is there. And I got very, very lucky because when my when I transitioned, my mom was the one to tell my grandfather. So this is my mother's father. And mind you, I lived with my grandparents. So I lived with my grandparents. My mom and my dad came to the States to build a future and left me with my grandparents because they just didn't have, they felt I would be more safe that way, at least temporarily. So I literally grew up with my grandparents at first. And the only thing my grandfather had to say was, well, I always wanted a grandson. So I got really lucky to have a grandpa like that. And it's one of those things to this day they don't fully understand, and that's okay. I really like for me, it's it is hard to understand. It's pretty crazy, and like it's okay. Like it is crazy. So like I don't expect like my grandfather is a simple, intelligent but simple man. And, like he's he's paid his dues in life. I don't need him to understand. Like I just need him to be nice to me, and he is. So I got lucky that overall my family is very supportive, even in Romania. But I would say overall as a country, yeah, it would be.
So when
Yeah.
did you end up coming to the States?
I was like 5, 6.
And you went
I
to
was
New York first?
Yes, I lived in New York first. So I lived on Long Island. That's how I ended up at Bev's. I got top surgery, and the minute I got top surgery, I was like, all right, I gotta go to the gym. I'm skinny as
And
hell.
and
Yeah.
so what age were you when you started the transition?
So it was like a kind of like there was a couple phases. So at first I socially transitioned. So I started socially transitioning when I was like 13, but it was just social. So like I just cut my hair. Um, I never was, and again, I know it was very young, and it's one of those things that it is very controversial. And again, I understand. like both sides. Fortunately, I came from a family, and I admittedly recognize I came from a family that was able to pay for support systems most people don't have access to. So I was able to go to the Acronym Institute in New York City. They did like a 3 day evaluation on me. It was a serious evaluation, cost a lot of money, to kind of see like, all right, is this a phase? Because I was scared too. Like a lot of people won't admit this either, but even if you're trans, like it is scary. Like it's one of those things, especially if you're young, you're like, I don't know, is this a phase? I don't know. I don't think so. At least if you're self-aware enough, like you should be a little nervous. So we did that. They said, yeah, your kid's like a textbook case of, someone suffering of gender dysphoria, which back then was still qualified as a mental disorder. They've, as of recently, gotten rid of that, which I don't understand why. But they qualified me with that mental disorder, and they're like, okay, let your kid first socially transition, feel that out first. From there, I was put on a hormone blocker first. I was put on that till I was 16. So I was put on that for 4 years. Then I was given testosterone and got my top surgery at 16. And then I'm 23 now. Reflecting back on all of it, do I regret transitioning young? No. But do I understand why people think you should transition earlier? Yes. Because I had to make decisions, very serious decisions about my life at a very young age where certain things weren't on my mind. For example, when I was first starting testosterone, at 16, right? At 16, you think you're a grown up. You're not fucking grown up. 16, you think you know everything. You don't. So at 16, I went to that endocrinologist and they're like, all right, Alex, so, you have to make this decision now because if you come off the puberty blocker, it's like, yeah, you could restart your entire process as a woman. Like you could technically, give birth to a child one day. But if you start this testosterone, there's no going back. Like you need to decide, do you in the future potentially want biological children? Because you will not be able to do that. And they did tell me, and listen, people think that they don't like, have that conversation with you. At least with me, they did. I can't speak for other, again, this was now like 7, 8 years, like, it's been almost 10 years now. So I don't know if the process has changed, but they were upfront with me and they asked, hey, are you good with this? I don't know. I don't know if I was mature enough to answer that question. That's a really like at 16, I'm not thinking about having kids, And like now that I'm in my 20s, I have a business, I'm like starting to be an adult, I like reflect back with a bit more maturity and I'm like, I don't know if that like because like obviously like one of my options would have been to preserve my eggs, but that would have been it was crazy expensive to do that. That is only available for like select very high income. And like I already had such guilt for having my parents pay for what they did. I was self-aware. I knew that they were paying a handful just to allow it to help me. And like I'm forever grateful for them for that. Right. So I felt so guilty to even ask them to preserve my eggs like that because I was 16. I couldn't pay for it. So I said yes, that's fine. But now looking back, am I a sad person? No, I would consider myself an overall optimistic, positive, productive member of society. But I understand why people say, should we maybe wait till you're at least, 18? I understand that perspective. And a lot of people in the community would not be willing to admit that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So I think looking back, I don't know. I actually don't know what's the right answer. And I'm willing to accept that I don't know everything. I don't know if I was too young at 16 to decide it. Because maybe when I'm 30, maybe I do want biological kids. You don't know. It's one of those things either if I was old enough, I could have preserved my own eggs and paid for it. And then, like, especially nowadays, you see them with a donor. Science is incredible. Who knows? Maybe science in 10 years from now, I could just have a kid with my future wife. Like, who knows? Like,
Well,
it's
and there's no guarantee you could have. I mean, there's, people
right.
that can't have kids all the time, it could have,
Exactly.
sacrificed all that for potentially nothing. But so it's tricky, there's layers to it. And like you said, it's people need to be able to take the time to actually, talk about it.
And
So
have perspective. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like I said, part of it is, just some of it's just where you're at too. You know what I mean? Like there's so many like where I was from originally versus where I went. That can change your perspective a lot just being exposed.
Mhm.
What was your at that so you're like 16 and you're doing the top. So what was your community like in your friend circle, and what was it like around your peers at that time?
I would say again, I got incredibly lucky. I'm from New York, Long Island, so I'm not gonna even like sugarcoat it. I would say everyone overall was very accepting. So was my like school district. Shout out to Three Village. I went to Three Village. I was definitely the first trans person in my school district, at least that I was aware of, and was very out and trying to work with the school system. At first, I just used the nurses, rest bathroom. I didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable, nor did I want to be uncomfortable. I kind of didn't look like either gender. I kind of just looked like someone look at me and be like, I have no idea. Like I was kind of like,
Pat,
I,
just a little
I have
Pat.
no idea what I'm looking at, kind of thing. So I tried to be as mindful of giving people the space to kind of process it, and I think that really helped me out. If people misgendered me, I didn't yell at them. I didn't like get upset, and I would actually comfort them and affirm them and be like, "Hey, you've known me as she for like 8 years. I don't expect you to just like say he. Like I
Yeah.
understand it's gonna take a second, and it's also my job as the person transitioning to make that. I don't know. I feel like if I'm the one going through the transition is my responsibility. So it's my responsibility to show up, you know, socially integrating as a man. So like I don't know. I had a very easy time, but I also think it's because I allowed it to be an easy time for everyone else.
Yeah.
I didn't give people shit for it. And I think that just comes down to I was so accepted by my parents, and I think that's where people need to give the trans community some slack. Where like so many people aren't accepted by their parents, and it plays such a major role in your
Mm.
transition that they start to project on others. So whenever I see a transgender person where their parents and their family were really accepting, you never see them giving other people a hard time
Yeah,
because
so true.
they're okay with themselves. They're
Yeah.
okay, but it's always the people that unfortunately have a really bad experience at home that you see them projecting and being angry with the world and angry. Why aren't you calling me he or she? Like, and it's really sad. Like, I think people need to reshift their narrative and understand these people are just feel so rejected. They're just immediately always in defensive mode. And I think
Yeah.
just like most people, the problem starts at home. Just like most people's fucked up shit, it starts at home, right? So it's really sad, and I really do equate my willingness to be so open and casual about it because of my parents' willingness to be open and casual about it.
Yeah, it's so true. I have a trans female friend who, same thing, her family's really supportive, and she had all this. I mean, she did a lot. I mean, she like shapes a bone down, did everything, and she jokes about it herself and like makes posts, funny posts about how it's easier to buy a body than it is to buy a face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, it's like I said, I think that's really big. I think you're really fortunate for that. Maybe like we can get off of this because, like I said, this isn't identifying you at all. But I'm just curious, does like when did like when did Caitlyn Jenner come out? Is that like does that affect like you guys? Did it really like make things easier to come out publicly? Was that around the same time? Is that like
Oh gosh, I don't even know. I think I came out way before Caitlyn.
before? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, way before. I came out before like it really got like more attention in the media, honestly. Um, yeah, when I came out, it was very niche. It was very, you
It was
know,
only in Hollywood before that. It was only the
yeah,
actors kids.
it was one of those things that, and where I do want to give people, I will say though, I knew very quickly like that, not, I don't want to say that there was something wrong with me, but I knew like something was off. And it really for me started when people started socially acknowledging me as a woman, like before, because like when you're young, everyone's just a kid. At least
Yeah.
hopefully that's the way you see a kid. Like everyone's just a kid. You're literally everyone, no one has any features that will identify you with either sex. Like no one has boobs or like,
Yeah.
like everyone's just a twig. Everyone's just a twig. And they're not necessarily separating you yet. Like, okay, girls go here, boys go there. And it's when that started happening, I started realizing people saw me as a girl. I realized that there was something wrong with me because I, I just never, I don't know. I always tell people like I know I'm biologically a woman. It's the social part that really bothers me. Like I'm not naive. Like it's And I don't know why. Like, and like, if people ask me why, it's just this deep rooted, like, I have no emotional attachment. Like, most people have an emotional attachment to their gender. Like, I had such like I had no, I felt like I was living someone else's body. It's so difficult to explain. And that's why it's I understand why there's so much like back and forth on the topic. But I would say just know it's not like I went from being incredibly extroverted, playing with the guys, handball, during daycare because my parents were working. I was always doing something outside. I turned into that extroverted person at a very young age to like the complete opposite. When I started experiencing the symptoms of gender dysphoria, I wouldn't leave the house. I didn't want anyone to look at me. My father, a photographer, there's literally no photos of me between the age of 8 and like 11. Zero. Like I was completely like, it just went completely secluded and nothing triggered it. And that's the thing, right? Like people think that there must be something traumatic. As far as I'm concerned, nothing traumatic happened in my life.
That's how it was with my friend too. She showed me pictures of her like dressing as a little girl when she's like 5, 6 years old. She's like, I just for the moment, like I could think about it. She's like, this is, I just there's something in me. So it's like there's definitely cases of that. Yeah, your parents are superstars, man. They go out of communist Romania,
Yeah,
make enough money to help you, and then they're super supportive. So that's awesome.
yeah,
You got
amazing people. Actual superheroes, when they say like day-to-day superheroes, my parents
what
definitely.
what did they do for a living? You said your dad was a photographer?
Yeah, so my parents own Lighthouse Photography. It's one of the major wedding photography studios in Long Island. So
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
And
Cool.
it's funny. My mom was a prosecutor in homicide, and then she went to that. So it was a really interesting. Yeah, she went
Wow.
one thing to another for sure. And that's the thing, right? You would think someone that's a prosecutor for homicides making lots of money. She was poor, and now she owns a photography studio with my father, and now they make way more money. My father was a dentist. Like they had like traditional lawyer dentist kind of like
Yeah.
very traditional like jobs that would keep you stable. Not in Romania, so that's what people lack perspective. America is a great place to live. Like
Yeah.
everything, like you can make money literally doing nothing. Like
Oh,
that.
that's what I say to like people that I mean, I guess you're not a millennial, are you? You're young. So
I'm Gen Z.
you're just Z. So, I'm a millennial, and that's something I tell my generation because we seem to be the ones that complain the most because we're not like as good technologically and stuff. But I tell them like, yeah, you can't just go get an easy job and buy a house, like, but you can create your own life now, and we have so much more information out there. I'll take that trade, versus just getting a for sure boring life where I can, do middle of the road stuff.
I think it's never been easier to be successful.
Yeah.
Truly. Like, yeah, every market is saturated, but it's always been like that. Like everything's based
Well,
off of
I don't know if your market is super saturated.
no, no, it's not. And that's the thing. Like, that's why I started it because I realized I was like, there's no one doing this. And like, one, I want to give back to the community. And two, like, why not? Like, I'm in a very unique position. Like, I definitely would love to do this. And I started under Jason. I ended up like doing my own thing because I had this weird phase where I actually ended up being a financial advisor, but that's a whole another story on itself. But so that's when I left Jason because I was like, I can't do both at the same time. But yeah, that's why I started this because I was like, wait, there's like I had such a hard time finding a coach. I'm sure there's so many other trans guys that are going through the same thing.
Are you online only, or do you have in-person clients too?
I'm online only just because honestly, if I was in person, we're so scattered. Like it really is such a minority of the population.
Yeah.
Like another reason I don't have any trans friends in real life is because I've never met one. Like social media makes it seem like there's so many more of us than there are. Like there really is not. If I did in person, I wouldn't have a business.
Yeah.
So,
Now, so I will switch it up a little bit. I saw you on your Instagram. What was this? What is it that you have going on in Costa Rica? What is this trip you're doing out there?
oh yeah, so pretty much, it's through Trova Trip. Shout out to Trova Trip. They reached out to me about this. I didn't even realize that there was such a thing such as what they do. I think it's awesome. And pretty much it's a group trip. So we're going to Costa Rica. It's like there's 15 of us now. We're all trans. Partners are welcome to come. And yeah, pretty much Trova Trip, what they do is they reach out to influencers and they're like, hey, like this is a great way to connect with your community on a deeper level. And they do everything for you. They pretty much act as like a travel agent, pretty much. Um, And from there, like everyone still like pays for their stuff, but it's great because I don't have to really, my only job is to get the group together. And
Yeah.
then from there, Trova Trip handles everything else. So, and they have like great discounts because I'm assuming like, they have like repetitive trips and stuff. So it's a Costa Rica trip. It's an entire week. Um, Everything is accommodated for other than your plane tickets, just because, I mean, everyone's going to be flying in from different places. It's hard for them to accommodate that. Everything else, all the hotels, the transportation between events, your food, everything is covered. It's $2,500 for a week. That is
Oh, that's
so
cool.
cheap.
Yeah.
People like, if you travel enough, you know how cheap that is. And like it covers everything. So there's 15 of us. And yeah, I mean, I just want to do it because again, just like I mentioned, people think there's so many more trans people than there is. I think it would be fantastic. I was like, let's just do like a trans guy trip. It would be a great way for me to, like, a lot of my clients are coming, so it's a great way for me to connect with my clients in person. Um, Even if you're not, and if they aren't my client, I made sure to do like thorough background checks, so like everything is like good. So yeah, it's just like a group trip. There's really no incentive in it other than to connect with other people in my community with like-minded, minds and views.
You're gonna be doing any working out or any fitness related stuff?
Yeah, so we're going to be training, so I like kind of added that into the schedule. I'm pretty much doing everything other than legs to spare them. So
Yeah, that's really cool.
yeah.
That's really cool. So let's talk a little bit about like your actual training style and the way you work out. What kind of like what would you say your style is? Are you more lower volume?
Yeah, 100%. I would say the way I train is warm up, acclimating, top set, you're done, move on. I've always trained like that. I'm a big believer in like the Dorian Yates style of training. It's what my body's honestly responded, especially my legs have responded incredibly to just, I just like balls to the walls, like, really, really push myself with good form, of course, but like the weight's got to be there for sure. Yeah.
So you're not really in the camp of the whole super evidence-based, super extreme stretch and reps in reserve and all about the volume.
No, I would definitely say I'm not in the volume camp. I would say like time under tension techniques and stuff like that. Sure. I think I also I differentiate based off of muscle group. So like for example, my back and my legs, I go heavy. But still like when I say heavy, I'm not like, and listen, all the respect to Branch Warren, but I'm not like training like Branch Warren where I'm like flinging weight around. But I would definitely say like more like Dorian Yates, like very like heavy, but still um like everything I do, like I think about it. So it's like slow negatives, explosive positives. Yeah, I would say I'm like that Mike Mentor, Dorian Yates camp overall though. I would say the only one I'm not like that is arms. I think arms, I mean, look at every bodybuilder in the 80s. They had crazy arms, mediocre back and legs, right?
Yeah.
Like with like Arnold behind you, and how they
Yeah.
train, how they train arms, high
Right.
volume. So I would say the one thing I definitely train with volume would be arms, maybe shoulders.
Yeah. Who are some of your like favorite bodybuilders? I mean, you following bodybuilding for a while. Was this something you followed before you transitioned or right when you were starting to transition?
Oh yeah, I would say I'm pretty in the loop with like the
Yeah.
bodybuilders. And again, like it's funny because again, like I always say, guys, like I'm an amateur bodybuilder. I'm not going to even try and compare myself with like even just the pros, regardless of if they hit the Olympia stage. But I'm just like I would say I'm just really involved in the community, so like I can bring that very interesting perspective of like two communities in one. I would say my favorite bodybuilders. Oh man, there's so many, honestly. Um, I would say like OG. I would say Dorian Yates, just because I agree with his training style. I would say, I mean, I can go based off of era, truthfully. I would say
Understood.
Jay Cutler, I think, is a fantastic representative of the sport. I think
Yeah.
he's a great bodybuilder, but I think he's a good person. And I think it's not just about being a good athlete. I think it's about being a good person and being a good representative. Like I think being a good representative is just as important, especially if you're Mr. Olympia, regardless of like what class you're in.
And Jay really goes out of his way. It's like I have a buddy who we did Jay's show back in 2018 that I won, and he got like fourth. But he always like he met Jay a bunch of times, and he always would like try to go to any appearance that Jay would have, and Jay would always send him texts and had his number and always encourage him. And he gave him a lot of positive feedback. And now the guy's a pro. He passed me up, and he
Mhm.
credits Jay to being a lot of his influence to keep going.
Jay
And that's
remembers
like
my
no
name.
one will ever know that. You know, no one will ever know that he spent his time
No,
just touching this little amateur guy who no one gave a shit about.
he met me once, and then he was at I believe it was Arnold, and I just went to greet him, and then he saw me at Bev's. He remembered my first and last name. I was like, listen, I'm not a hotshot here. How the hell do you remember my name? Like that's incredible. Like really, like stand up person. Sincerely, I would say Jay was probably my number one. Um, in terms of physique, um, I really I like the mass with class kind of camp. So like I like the 212 guys a lot. That's why I want to do 212. So like I think Sean Clarita, I think is I pronounce his last name. He has a cool physique in terms of like current guys. Um, I think that oh gosh, why am I blanking on his name?
212?
Derek. Yeah, Derek.
Oh, Derek. Yeah.
He said I think I like his physique a lot. I know that he came pretty like he didn't win this time, but I think when he won, he looked great. I think when he was like he peaked, I believe it was last year, right? He won.
Yeah.
Yeah, last year I think he was incredible. I think it's not just about this muscle; it's about the shape. Anyone can be big, right? I like Derek's look a lot. That's why I like 212. Um, there's so many bodybuilders. It's crazy. I feel like every single year there's so many new bodybuilders on the scene. It's just like hard to keep up with.
What do you
Um,
think about Sean competing against Chris this weekend? Are you following that at all? The Prague?
oh yes, I saw that. I saw that. I think it's
That's
gonna be
gonna be an interesting
interesting.
comparison, right?
Yeah, I think what Chris is doing is cool because he's kind of showing like it's not just classic bodybuilders. And I feel like a lot of bodybuilders, especially the guys, kind of stay in their groups like, oh, we're the open guys, oh, we're the classic guys, oh, we're the physique guys. Like, no, like you guys are all bodybuilders. And I think there's a lot of like hopefully, friendly competitiveness between the different like groups. So it's cool to see someone like Chris kind of like really blurring those lines. And yeah, I think he'll do well. I mean, Chris is Chris for a reason, right? So um, yeah, I mean, with the competitive bodybuilders, I think there's so many. Um, I follow a lot of like, oh gosh, oh my gosh, Flex Lewis. I'm such an
Oh
idiot.
yeah, yeah.
Flex Lewis looks great. I think I really like Flex Lewis. I like the 212 guys. Yeah.
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 Keon, I mean Keon looks crazy, obviously.
Obviously, Keon,
But
yeah.
that's something that I would say is not fair. You know what I mean? That's the same thing as as a trans female
Yeah,
competing. It's just
yeah.
Keon walking around.
Yeah. Oh gosh, who is another guy? He is an OG. He was one of those guys that he would train like 6 months and then stop for 6 months and then just blow up.
Kevin?
Yes,
Yeah,
Levrone.
Kevin. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kevin's a funny guy. Kevin's messaged me a couple times. I've gone back and forth with him. He's a very nice
Oh,
guy.
cool.
Really cool guy.
Yeah, he's definitely one of my favorites ever. I used to watch his videos all the time, and yeah, he would just look like a normal bro, and then 6 months later, he'd be, repping like 315 behind the neck, just
Yeah.
looking like a
I mean,
monster.
yeah, genetics aside, I still think you need to capitalize. Yeah, does Keon and Kevin like have great physiques? Absolutely. And like good genetics, but they still capitalize on it. Like they could have done nothing with their genetics,
Well, and that was the critique from Keon for a while, is he wasn't coming in shape, and then when he
Yeah.
finally did put it together, he was just undeniable,
Yeah.
totally
And super
undeniable.
nice guy, another super nice guy. At least I don't follow. I know there's like drama in the bodybuilding world. I don't care for that. I don't follow that. I don't know if there's any drama
That's
around
so
it.
much. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot more drama in like the influencer world. Are there any like influencers that you follow that you get a lot of your information from that you like their stuff?
I used to follow like John Meadows. I would follow like
Uh,
John. No, I really, when it comes to social media, I get worse. And like, I'm about to say something acting like I'm so old, but like, I would say as I get older, even though I'm still young, I really just post, check my client. Like, I'll check my clients' Instagrams and get off. Like, as I get older, it's too much drama for no reason on social media. So I tend to just post what I gotta post. I'll check my coaches' pages to support. I'll check my clients' pages to support. And that's really it. I'm choosing my peace honestly over anything
yeah.
else. Like I'm not trying to get involved in anything.
Right.
So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm up to date with. I follow guys from like Bevs like Sadiq
Yeah.
or because like I mean I know them. You know.
I like Sadiq. Sadiq gave me some really nice compliments when I saw him at the Arnold. I've been out to Bev's a couple times. It's cool. I like Bev's a lot. Have you been to any other crazy gyms in the US? You been out to Cali at all?
I've been to Golds in Cali. I mean I'm in Texas now, so I've been to Armbrust in Denver,
Oh,
which
I've
is
never
like,
been there. I really want to see
yeah,
that. Have you been to
Armbrust is
Destination?
cool. Yeah, I think I would say the most impressive gym. Honestly, the gym I'm at now, House of Gains in Austin, shout
I've
out.
been to House of Gains. Yeah, I've been there.
Really like all panada. I think I'm
Yeah.
pronouncing it correct. Like really cool Italian machines. I really like. I would say the gym I'm at now has the coolest machines. Maybe it doesn't have like. I haven't seen anyone at House of Gains. Sorry if there's any really big bodybuilders that go to my gym. I just haven't seen you around. I haven't necessarily seen like crazy people at the gym, so maybe it doesn't have the reputation of like I know like Mart's Fitz trains at and of course Phil Keith train at Armbrust. So maybe like people there that are like, oh, whoa, they train there. But House of Gains, where I train now, has really good machines, honestly.
Have you done any of the ones in Vegas?
I was just in Vegas for something completely unrelated to bodybuilding. It was more business oriented. And I was so in and out. I didn't even like,
Oh
I was,
man, you
yeah,
should definitely at least try the torture, just if you've never used that line, just because it's pretty cool. The torture gyms are pretty
really?
cool. Yeah,
Okay.
because
I hear,
they're like Panada. I would say they're very similar to Panada, except their pressing's probably better, but their
okay.
pulls are really similar to Panada.
Good to know. Yeah, that was the one thing. I'm so happy you mentioned that because I always felt the Panana machines, for specifically for chest, weren't the best, and I just didn't want to say anything out of sake of like disagreeing with the world. I was like, oh, I don't really like Panana chest machines, but yeah, cool, good to know.
Yeah, I love the back stuff. So I'm sorry, I have a question. I just totally it was just random came up in mind. So you mentioned you had a girlfriend. So what is the dating scene like? How do you as a trans man date? Or is this like an app thing? Do you cold approach? Because I don't even think normal biological males cold approach that much. Like how does
Yeah.
that work and how does like disclosure work?
Well, yeah, I mean, great questions. I would say, at least in my viewpoint, disclosure is immediate. If you, I mean, any girl I've dated knew beforehand I was trans, so it wasn't like a conversation I had to have with them. They kind of just knew off the gate I was trans. I would say if I was ever in a situation where they didn't know, that's immediately disclosed. I think that is also something that is debated within the trans community. Some people say, "Oh, hold off." No, tell them right away. That is something that is incredibly important to know. And they'll argue, oh well, I don't want to put myself in a dangerous situation. And I'm like, so hold up. So
That's way more dangerous.
right. So you think it's more dangerous to tell them in a restaurant setting than when you're in the bedroom? Like, oh, by the way, like which one is locked, doors closed? Like what? Like, I don't know. I'm the type, I'm like, listen, I want to tell you out of respect, I'm a transgender man. That means I'm biologically a woman. I'm socially integrated as a man. If that is not your thing, that is cool. But let us not waste either of our time. And I just want to get that out of the way now. I've never been in a situation where I've been rejected because of that, but they have told me because I was so honest about it that they immediately respected me more and they would feel a lot more comfortable moving forward because I immediately ripped the band-aid off and I was like, listen, I'm an open book. Whatever question you have to make this comfortable for you, if you want to continue forward, tell me now. And I've found that women are a lot more holistic in the way they love. Like they're not as physical naturally. And nothing wrong that men are a bit more physical at first, but I think women are a little bit more, at least from my experience, being and living as a woman. It's like a lot of women are a lot more holistic, so they don't care as much up front. So they're a little bit more willing to like be experimental than men
Yeah.
are. Right? And I also think there's a lot more, unfortunately, I think there's a lot more social stigmas placed on men. And I would, it's funny, I would always argue in for men in these situations. I'd be like, why is it so much more socially acceptable for a woman to be bisexual than a man? Why? And then I would actually argue with Lexi about this just to prove a point. I'd be like, and she's like, well, men do it to themselves. I'm like, no, 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 no. Men do it not. Because would you date a bisexual man? And she was like, no. I'm like, but you date a trans guy? That doesn't make sense to me.
That's
That
fun.
doesn't make like that's so
Well,
unfair to me.
everyone's got their different, the differences in their head where they have
Yes.
things categorized and blocked off. That's really interesting, though.
Right. But I've been in these unique situations where I honestly think people give men so much shit for like stuff like this of like being naturally like, but I'm like on it and like be like, oh well, men did it to themselves. I'm like, I beg to differ because I've talked to so many women that they would rather date a transgender man that is straight than a bisexual biological man. It is crazy. And I'm like, I think dating the trans guy is a little bit more out there than dating the bisexual
I'm gonna
man.
I'm gonna ask my girl. I think she would probably say the trans, to be honest.
Why? Like it's
She
crazy.
said she said so. I have a client who has a friend who they're a married couple, and the male, they're in their 60s. The male's transitioning, and he's full blown except for the bottom surgery, and he kind of wants to do that, and that's like what is, the factor that's kind of like keeping, though she's worried she might feel like a lesbian if he goes all the way through with that,
Yeah,
but
and that's another thing. That's where it gets touchy, right? Like I think it's really unfair to expect if you're in a relationship and you decide to transition in the relationship, I think it's super unfair to expect your partner to stay. Would it be great if they stay? Absolutely, you love them, but you can't like they didn't sign up for that. They
yeah,
they signed up to date you as a man or whatever you were. I like that's another controversial thing. Like, it's one of those things. I don't think either of them wrong. It's just you can't be mad at either of them. Like you can't if the person feels the need to transition because like it's really impacting their life, then you can't get mad at them for that. But in the same respect, I would argue it depends if they have kids or not. But if they don't have kids and it's just a relationship, like, understood, but then you also can't expect the person to stay. Like honestly, like I don't think, and this is coming from me, and I'm trans. I don't think I would date someone if I started dating like with Lexi. If she's a woman now and decided to be a man, I don't think I would date her, and I'm trans.
well,
So
yeah, but yeah, that makes sense though. I mean, if you that's what you're into, right? I mean, you can't help what you're into, you know what I
exactly.
mean?
Mhm.
Yeah, it doesn't change, doesn't make anything bad unless it's, bad, kids or something. But
Right.
so you're single right now then, right?
Yeah.
So are you gonna is the apps the way that you would meet your next potential girlfriend? Is that what you would use, or do you have
Oh
people in
man.
your social circle that's easier?
Yeah, I'm usually like a social circle
Because do they
depends.
do they have apps like specifically for trans men
Yeah,
that are
there is.
into women? Okay, I mean I don't know how they're probably awesome. They probably have a few, but it's probably one of those things, right? Where it's like you get a couple blips and that's it. That's everybody in the whole area.
Right. It's one of those things. Yeah, I would say there is. Would I use them? I don't know. I'm a very like organic in person kind of guy. I think I don't know. Would I be open to it? Yeah, I would consider myself overall open person. There's definitely apps, I would say. Also just going to like LGBT bars. I don't drink first and foremost, so I'd have to be in a group situation. Otherwise, it's really awkward. I don't drink. I've never drank, especially bodybuilding didn't help that. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's usually organic. Yeah, so usually with me, it's just people I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old, so I never use any of the apps or anything, but I know, my group of friends that are single now do, and it's funny, like we're talking about the trans disclosure thing. There's be a lot of times where they meet a girl and then
I'm
like right
so
before they link up, or
sorry.
they'll tell them, or they'll be like, okay, what kind of filters or what is this? Like this was not
I'm
what
so
I thought it was gonna be.
sorry. And it's one of those things like why? Like there are people that will date trans people and there's people that won't date brunettes. Like who cares? Like there's gonna
Yeah,
be people
exactly.
that don't but like if you're not into dick, you're not into dick. I don't know what to say. Like, it's really like
Uh,
it's also unfair because what if it's really important for that man to have a family,
yeah.
like biological kids? That's not gonna happen. It's and it's a little rough, but like that's just the truth. I know so many men that would date trans women. It's like a thing. There is a guy
Oh
that will
yeah.
date trans women. There are many, and there's many women that would date a trans guy. Like it's you just gotta have patience and not don't lead people on. I see it as leading people on.
So do you plan on competing now again, or what are your plans for the future as far as bodybuilding?
Yeah, I think right now I'm just trying to get like settled into Austin, make sure my business doesn't burn and crash to the ground while like because right now we're in the process of transitioning to a different app. But once that's all sorted and I can finally like, I always tell people like I always say right now I'm not optimized for balance, unfortunately. Like right now I'm optimized for my business. But once I'm able to optimize my schedule for bodybuilding, I will. I just unfortunately am not right now optimized for that because it is a sacrifice. You gotta
Oh, it's true. Yes.
it's a total sacrifice in your schedule. So, and I'm okay with that. So I need to first put myself in a position that I can do that. But once I can, I would definitely love to do it again.
And you're so young still too, so it's not like
Yeah.
you're going to be missing a
No.
lot of time. And
Mhm.
then what else are you working on at all as far as your coaching business? You have this app, you just switch apps.
Yeah. So right now we're like we're utilizing one platform. We're now going to another. I'm expanding my team. Right now I'm kind of in this mindset of you know, I have, of course, like my very, very loyal clients that they've been working with me for like years. But I'm kind of getting into this position. Like anyone that knows me, my personal life will, you know, they'll say Alex works. Like I have a very high level of standard for myself, and I'm trying to like scale down the amount of people I work with directly, and then focus on building out the team a bit more. So then that way I can kind of free up my schedule to get back into things such as bodybuilding because it's just unfair to the clients either. Like I want to make sure that you're working with either myself or a coach that can give you the 100%. And I can only work with so many people at once that can give 100% while competing. And that's just the truth. So I'm working on really, training my team to be able to be at and they're all great coaches, but really be at like, at one point it's not even about being a good coach, it's about time management, man. Like,
Yeah.
so you can be a great coach if you coach two people, but what if you coach 100?
Yeah,
It's a
no,
different,
I think
it's a
I think
different,
you're very young to have all this. You got to hustle right now so you can chill in your 30s. I
right?
mean, you'll be able to, it sounds like you'll be able to chill before your 30s even. So,
Yeah.
what is your ultimate goal in business wise? Is it just to have the coaching platform? Is there anything else you're trying to do long term?
Um, that's a great question. I would say I would love. I have so many things I want to do with my life. I refuse to just like. I love bodybuilding. Like it. That is. I really don't follow any other sports. Like I am a very singular minded person when it comes to sports, and for me, it's definitely bodybuilding. But I would say I try and not have my entire existence and who I am be bodybuilding. So I would say long term, I want to buy my freedom. I always tell people like I want to live a life where if I want to compete, I can compete. But I don't want to put financial pressure on competing because then all of a sudden it's not going to be a passion anymore. Like I think the minute you rely on competing as your financial source of income, all of a sudden it's no longer like I want it to be my passion project. I would say for money and income, again, like I have a background as a financial advisor. So for me, like investments, real estate, continuing the coaching business, but maybe from more of a passive just management position and maybe helping other coaches scale their businesses. So kind of taking that route, maybe like building out the platform where I'm just managing and helping others scale. I've been able to scale my business, I would say, for a 23-year-old pretty successfully. Um, yeah, I would say for me, my mindset always is I would say I'm very persistent in pretty much buying my freedom, not having to working whenever I want to work.
Well, I mean, you got great role models. Your parents really
Yeah.
showed you how to do it. That's a great story, man. I really
Thank you.
appreciate your time. Is there anything else you want to go over or touch on at all before I let you go?
No, I would say thank you so much for having me. I think this was a very interesting and like conversation. I hope that, people take at least something away from it that they either find interesting, beneficial to know. And I would say,
Oh,
yeah,
they will. This was great, man.
oh, cool. I appreciate that. Yeah, I would say, especially with like the political climate right now and everyone's so against each other, I would just urge people from every side to be willing to have a conversation. I think, when I first immigrated to this country was it would be like he's my best friend. I don't agree with anything he has to say politically. He's kind of a moron, but I love him. And like I want to get back to that America where I can my best friend Jared, I don't agree with everything he has to say, but he's still my best friend. Like there was a time when if you're an American, like I see this in Texas because I live in Texas now. Like it doesn't matter. Like if you live in Texas and you're a Texan, Texans love each other, man. Like that is one thing they have. They love each other. Like I'm sure you know that because you live here. Like I want to see that. I want to see that again for America as a whole. Like I don't think people realize how special that is. That as a country you can agree to disagree. Like I want to get back to a place where we can have that, and have like open conversations like this where I'm just able to freely speak to you and you speak to me, and maybe we don't necessarily agree on everything, but that's okay. You know, I think that's a higher level of consciousness. So I would say my main message would be let us all get back to a place where we can agree to disagree and still live together, and appreciate each other as Americans. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great message, man. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. This has been a great convo. Definitely let me know if you ever come out here to Cali to get a workout in.
Awesome. Definitely. It was a pleasure, Jonathan. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it, man. Have a good night.